Mhm. All right, here we go. All right. Hey guys, haven't been on this channel live for a while. I got some news to tell you. See if we get this thing working. Those of you that want to be on the chat, thank you guys for coming in. Um, if you're watching this on a hashtag replay, we got a lot of things to talk about. Let me go ahead and get this thing started. Let's see if it works. And welcome to the show. Uh, I got to talk about this subject. A lot of people don't want to hear it, but we got to talk about it. What's going on in Chicago? Uh, the House had a committee meeting in Chicago talking about violence in the violent city of Chicago. Get ready to play this on. We will go ahead and do this real quick. Let me go ahead and make sure it's working. Uh, House Subcommittee. Here we go and put play. So this is going to last for about at least an hour. Okay. But we have a commercial. No. If I have a commercial, so give me just a second to get this thing working. Okay, it's supposed to begin shortly. We got to go. I think this, no, this is not what I want. Give me a second. I got to make sure it's working. All right. So this one, yes, this is what I want right here. I'll get to committee. So give me a second. It's loading up right now. Let me fast forward. Make sure I got it right. It's in Chicago. So yes, well, this is all about what's going on in the city of Chicago. Everybody knows in the Democrat world that Chicago is a free place, so they can rob, steal, and shoot, and nobody cares, except for one people. 3 Republicans in the House. They're having a meeting. Let's see if we get it started. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Let me go ahead and, here we go.
Justice reform.
Hold on. Go back it up. All right, we're going to back it up. Well, let it play for a couple of seconds. It's going to catch up. But yes, so basically what is going on is Democrats don't care about the crime in Chicago. Over the past couple of years, every weekend there are violent crimes, but no, the drive-by media don't want to talk about it. So yeah, they don't want to talk about it. I just waited for the loadout. There we go. Jim Jordan.
Committee will come to order. We welcome everyone to today's forum on victims of violent crime in Chicago. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Illinois to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we want to thank you all for being here today. The church is now recognized for an opening statement. Today's forum is about our commitment to justice and keeping communities safe. In recent years, we've all seen how the radical left has sought to undermine public safety in the name of criminal justice reform. The left has implemented pro-criminal policies that have allowed dangerous criminals to remain on the street. leftists attacked law enforcement and sought to defund the police. And then when crime goes up, they act shocked. And when cities become less safe, they act surprised. Earlier this year, we traveled to New York City and heard directly from victims of violent crime. We heard about the consequences of soft on crime policies implemented by rogue prosecutors and radical policymakers in New York City. Today, we are in the great city of Chicago, the second in our series on violent crime in major urban areas, to hear directly from victims. Thank you to our witnesses for your willingness to be here, and thank you for sharing your stories. Innocent people in Chicago are victimized by a justice system that cares more about political correctness than punishing the criminals who've harmed them and their families. For 11 years, Chicago has led the country in homicides, and has only gotten worse under State's Attorney Kim Foxx. According to an official report by the Chicago Police Department, crime in Chicago overall has increased during the last 5 years by nearly 20%. Theft is also a huge problem in Chicago, which saw an 114% increase in car thefts and a 32% increase in other thefts between 2018 and 2022. We know Chicago experienced yet another summer with higher rates of violence. Memorial Day weekend started with 11 people killed and 53 others, including 2 toddlers, wounded in shootings across the city. Over Labor Day weekend, 10 were killed and 34 more were wounded, including a 6-year-old boy struck by a bullet in his thigh while he was at his home. And we know what happened this past weekend. 30 individuals shot this past weekend. The rise in violent crime in Chicago has been coupled with attacks on the men and women who wear the uniform, on our great law enforcement officers. 2021, 76 Chicago police officers were shot in the line of duty. 2 officers, tragically, have already been killed this year. The brave men and women in law enforcement deserve better. Chicago leaders have argued Ms. Fox's policies on non-prosecution and eliminating cash bail are keeping too many criminals on the streets and making the city more dangerous. Her presumption is not to prosecute. Remember the violent riots back in 2020 where there were charges of assault, mob action, and aggravated battery to a police officer? Ms. Foxx told her office that there should be a presumption against proceeding unless there was a body or a dash cam footage available, or if a police officer was the complainant. A rogue prosecutor's decision not to prosecute crimes is made even worse when the legislature passes its pro-criminal policies that they did just recently with the so-called SAFE-T Act. This law abolished bail, implemented arrest and release policies for policing, limited when defendants could be deemed flight risk, and prevented police from arresting nonviolent trespassers. The result? 63% of Chicagoans now do not feel safe in their city. By downplaying surging crime and denying victims justice, the leaders of this city are failing their citizens. I mean, you stop and think about it. First, it was defund the police, the former mayor. Then it's this SAFE-T Act, and then it's a prosecutor who won't prosecute the bad guys. All that leads to the situation we see today. A former Cook County prosecutor, a 25-year veteran of the office, resigned last summer, saying he had zero confidence in the prosecutor's office. This level of crime spills into every aspect of daily life in Chicago. Local pharmacy chose to open 2 aisles for shoppers while everything else is kept hidden and only bringing out items at the shopper's request. Pharmacy took such drastic steps because that retail theft and the violence that comes with it is just too great in Chicago. We want to also extend a special thank you to the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police. John Canizara, thank you for the work you did, FOP president. I saw John just right here on the front. Yeah, right there on the front. Thank you so much. You guys, you've been tremendous hosts. We appreciate all you've done to help us set this up today. And we support you and we thank you for serving our country every day. Thank you, and I look forward to our conversation. And before we get to our witnesses, I want to ask the chairman of the Subcommittee on Crime, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I thank our witnesses for being here to testify today, and our members. Thank you to the FOP for opening up your doors and providing this wonderful facility for us. I want to also let everyone know that this is an official committee hearing. Committee hearing as if we were in Washington, D.C. in the House of Representatives. It is official. Every member of this committee knew about it, was invited to be here and has a duty, quite frankly, to be here. But you'll notice that, unfortunately, some of my colleagues across the aisle decided they didn't want to come and hear these important witnesses, what they have to testify, and consider this very critical and important issue. And I'm saddened for that. I'm saddened for that. But I will tell you that the crime subcommittee has worked hard on these issues. And let me just give you an idea. We've had hearings on retail crime because that's exploding in cities. Speaking of exploding, the explosion of fentanyl across our country. It affects everyone, small cities, large cities. In San Francisco, for instance, every day, 3 people die from fentanyl overdose. We've talked about border crime. We actually had a field hearing in Cochise County, Arizona, because of what's happening across our border. And it explodes and also impacts everything, including here in Chicago, you're impacted by the illegal migration that's taking place. Again, at that field hearing, an official hearing, not one Democrat showed up. What a shame. Last week, we had a hearing for victims of sex trafficking, which is America is the biggest sex trafficking, and our federal government is the biggest logistic arm for the cartels who are bringing in sex trafficking, facilitating sex trafficking. What a shame. We will have a series of hearings to mark up a number of bills and legislation dealing with all of these issues, commencing Thursday and going regularly for the remainder of this year. I thank the chairman, Mr. Jordan, for his leadership on this issue and for bringing us here to Chicago, this great city. On Sunday, Breitbart News reported at least 30 shootings in Chicago over the weekend with 3 fatalities. One victim, an 86-year-old man, was shot around 10 a.m. on Saturday while retrieving something from his truck. The second fatality occurred at 12:40 a.m. Sunday, about 2 miles from here, where we're sitting, where a 40-year-old was shot in the chest. And the third fatality occurred at 10:45 a.m. The 24-year-old victim was sitting in his vehicle when another vehicle pulled up alongside. 2 men exited and opened fire, killing the man. The Chicago Sun-Times has reported at least 433 people killed in Chicago from January 1 through September 24. Crime is also pushing businesses out of Chicago. Walmart has permanently closed 1/2 of their locations in Chicago in recent months. AT&T, Gap, Banana Republic, Uniqlo, Macy's, and Verizon have all closed locations in Chicago. Yesterday, a member of my staff went to grab a few items from Walgreens located across the street from the Art Institute of Chicago, around the corner from the iconic Cloud Gate sculpture in Grant Park. A sign indicated the store will be closing permanently within the month. And aisle by aisle, every product, including deodorant, toothpaste, will be behind locked cases to prevent the retail crime. These soft on crime policies undermine the rule of law and limit the freedom of everyday people. Law-abiding everyday people live in fear, and that fear results in limits on the ability to travel, engage in commerce, and to associate one with another. These policies emasculate law enforcement. They hand over control of a once great American city to violent criminals. And when I speak about this, I'm thinking of what really makes a community, its ability to trust each other. And that seems to be done in so many cities. Tragedy. It's a tragedy. When we look at our citizens and we say, how could this be? How can it be? It is because of failure of leadership. And I predict to you that we as a nation, if we continue on this path of lawlessness and a disregard for the rule of law, we will lose our freedoms. In order to have freedom, we must adhere to the rule of law. I look forward to our witnesses' testimony today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goodbye.
Thank you, gentlemen. He was spot on. We now will introduce today's witnesses, Mr. Gianna Caldwell. Caldwell is a political analyst and founder of Caldwell Strategic Consulting, which provides strategic advice and consulting service related to public affairs. On June 24th, 2022, 15 months ago, his younger brother Christian was murdered in Chicago. Police determined that that he was not the target of the shooting, but was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we have seen you in Chicago out there as an outspoken advocate for stopping this surge of violent crime we see across the country. We appreciate that work, and we appreciate you being here today. Mr. John Garrido III. Mr. Garrido served with the Chicago Police Department for more than 30 years, retiring as lieutenant in 2022. During his career, he worked in the patrol division, narcotics, violent crime, and homicide. We appreciate you being here today and the 30 years of service you gave this town and you gave to law enforcement. And finally, Mr. Carlos Yanez Jr. Mr. Yanez was shot several times in the head and shoulder during a traffic stop in August 2021 while serving as a Chicago police officer. Mr. Yanez's partner was tragically killed during this incident. After being shot, Yanez's doctors told him that he would never move the left side of his body again, but he regained movement after extensive physical therapy. We appreciate your service. We appreciate your perseverance and your dedication to overcoming the tragic shooting that you had to endure. We welcome all of our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. Please know that we have any written statements that you shared with us ahead of this forum. So accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes if you can, but we're going to be leading with that. If you got to go 7, 8 minutes, you go right ahead. This is that important. And we're going to start with Mr. Caldwell and then work right down the line. So Mr. Caldwell, you're recognized for whatever amount of time you want.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Jordan. Thank you, Chairman Biggs. And a special thank you to Congressman Burgess Owens, who's been working behind the scenes with me since last year to ensure that I can be before this body. My name is Gianno Caldwell. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I got involved in public service when I was 14 years old, working for my local alderman, because I actually believed my community in Chatham could be saved from violence, crime, and drugs. I eventually moved with the same goals in mind to Washington, D.C. and became a political consultant and a national media analyst and TV personality. Before I begin, I truly wish that it was not my place to be before you today. But I believe I had no choice. No choice because of the countless people in my hometown, including my own family, who are innocent victims of murder and violent crime. Those who are shot, robbed, carjacked, or even worse, those who had multiple people in their family murdered in Chicago. Those voices scream out for justice. Many of the elected officials have no for the people of the city, not just in blood, but also in treasure and opportunity as multi-billion-dollar businesses like King Griffin Citadel justifiably bleed Chicago. And he took millions of dollars in tax revenue with him. We know this has happened in due part to the policies of the Cook County prosecutor, Chicago's most recent mayors, the governor, other politicians throughout the state of Illinois. These officials have recklessly ignored the people they were elected to represent. And as a result, bodies, mostly Black bodies, are littered throughout the streets of Chicago. I unfortunately understand the pain of thousands of victims whose families have been destroyed. On June 24th of last year, I received a call that my innocent teenage baby brother, Christian, had been murdered, shot down in the street by a stranger when a group of men stepped out of a Black SUV and fired into a crowd on 114 South Vincent Street. The police have repeatedly said that my brother was not the target, that he just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. But in Chicago, being at the wrong place at the wrong time could be sleeping in your bed and a bullet comes through your window. Or in the backseat of a car at a McDonald's drive-thru as 7-year-old Jocelyn Adams was murdered. Living in Chicago should not come with a death sentence, but it does for too many Chicagoans. My brother Christian had the potential to do well in life. I still remember the day when he begged me to take him on a college tour out of state when he was just 16 years old. And we went. But Christian will never have the opportunity to go to college or to get married or to have kids or to build a career. And so many other youth in Chicago have experienced the same reality. I refuse to capitulate to the idea that Christian had just become another Chicago statistic, one of the hundreds of homicides in Chicago in 2022. There's an abundance of potential in Chicago among our youth and older alike. Unfortunately, much of that potential lies in graveyards across our city. Chicago recently had the highest number of homicides in more than a quarter of a century. As of today, 2023, it is on pace to join the previous 2 years as one of the most violent years in our city's history. From the moment I learned my brother Christian was murdered, I felt defeated. Since my younger sister Mia called me on June 24th, screaming into the phone, "Christian is gone," I felt a giant void in my heart. Never had I made room for the thought or possibility that someone so close to my life would be so stolen so violently. But that's naive, I suppose. On the same day my brother was killed, a 5-month-old girl by the name of Cicely was murdered in a drive-by shooting while sitting in the backseat of a car with her family. Chicago is an active war zone. This is not hyperbole. It's the people who are afraid to leave their homes, to walk to and from work, to walk anywhere in the city. With this same fear, with these same murders, be accepted in the suburbs? Absolutely not. The soft on crime policies that many of you know about here are prosecutors like Ken Fox, who refuses to prosecute, decriminalization of offenses, laws like the Safety Act, which ends cash bail and allow criminals
Chicago.
back on the street to commit more crime, and the no chase policy, which constrains the police from doing their jobs. Policies pushed by the Cook County prosecutor and current and previous mayors have proved to be a death sentence for the people of the city of Chicago. What started off as perhaps a noble cause for criminal justice reform has become justice for the criminal. It is our police who have been handcuffed as criminals no longer live in fear of arrest or prosecution. When you can steal at will, when you can drive away from a police stop, the streets become lawless. Murder, as many like my family know too well, is close behind. The elected officials here have systematically endangered the lives of all Chicagoans, but especially those of color, the marginalized who they claim to care about the most. Most shot and murdered in Chicago are Black men. According to the Chicago police, African Americans, including my brother, made up of 80% of the murder victims in Chicago in 2022. For the record, Black people make up only 29% of the city's population. We need help. Congress must use the power purse to place restrictions on the funding received by local governments to ensure elected officials are focused on what should be their number one priority, the protection of its citizens. Federal dollars are used effectively for natural disasters from storms to pandemics. It's time to use those same resources for man-made disasters. Providing funding for local law enforcement agencies to help hire, train more officers with the latest crime fighting techniques, support programs that address the root cause of crime, job training, education, and other social services to help people at at-risk communities. As small as it sounds, the federal government can help provide some special funding for funerals as innocent people being killed are those who need such help the most. Let the world know how many are buried in our communities here. Pass legislation that supports community policing, which emphasizes building much-needed relationships between law enforcement officers and the communities they serve. The First Step Act, a law that I lobbied for personally, provides funding for programs that help people who have been incarcerated successfully reintegrate into society. Congress could increase funding for the Second Chance Act to help reduce recidivism rates. Finally, Congress and the federal government should employ the full use of the FBI to help clear out murder cases in our cities. When I first spoke to the detective handling my brother's case, he told me he had other priorities and more cases had come in since my brother was murdered. I've since been told Chicago alone needs 2,000 new detectives to handle the current caseload. It wasn't until I angrily went on Chicago national media that the detective took me seriously. I had access to a platform most families do not. Even then, it didn't last long. Soon, police weren't returning my calls. And they weren't, even though there's been someone arrested, my brother's murder has not yet been solved. Ultimately, I believe the Chicago Police Department had failed my family and countless others Reforms within the Chicago Police Department are needed. I've had to go through hell in an attempt to get justice for my brother. I'm now working directly with the FBI Chicago field office. How many of the hundreds of murderers have that same opportunity? My love for Chicago is infinite and unconditional. It will always be home to me. I first got involved in public service when I was just 14, volunteering for my local alderman every day after school like it was a job. A decision which set me on the path to public service to help a city I love so much. But my family and no family should go through what I've experienced this past year. We have more resources than any nation in history. Why aren't we using those resources for people who need it most? Why are we allowing our cities, from Chicago to New York, to Los Angeles, to Baltimore, to Oakland, to Philadelphia, to San Francisco, to remain dangerous kill zones? While migrants are traveling from across the world to Chicago for a sanctuary city status, there continues to be no sanctuary and no peace for the very people who call Chicago home their entire lives. Today, I'm here to demand justice and accountability, not just for my baby brother, but the thousands of other Chicagoans whom we may never know their names. I implore you to exercise your full power and resources. Christian's death is senseless. It's a senseless loss, but it doesn't have to be a meaningless one. Please make him one of our last victims and help us save the people of Chicago. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. That was, we appreciate that. And appreciate what the tragedy your family's had to deal with and what you've had to go through. So thank you for being here. Officer Yanez, you're now recognized and you can take as much time as you want.
All right. So the reason why I played that, because in Chicago during the weekends, violent crime erupts, gun shooting erupts, black on black crime erupts. But where's the media? ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN don't cover it. There are only 3 channels that cover it: Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN. You know why the other media won't cover it? Because it's not in their fortitude. Democrat Party supports Castro's bail. They don't care about crime. They don't even talk about black on black violence. It happens every single day. But they will cover a shooting someplace else. If it's more than 2 or 3 people, they call it a mass shooting. That's where they cover it. But so what is the cause of this major crime spree in Chicago? I got some thoughts. A lot of people are not going to like it what I'm getting ready to say, but I'm going to say it. And if you're watching this, type in #replay. Number 1, the downfall of the black family. Yes, I said it. The downfall of the black family. Fathers are not in the house. Single moms don't even want their man to take care of them. They say they don't need a man to take care of them. While they have kids running around like crazy. Downfall of the American family. I understand why the Democrats, hey, we can get these people. Hey, single mom, we can take care of your kids. You just vote for us. That has not been working out for over 30 years in Chicago. Sanctuary cities. Now, here's the thing I want to talk about Chicago right now. Right now, the city of Chicago gives more everything towards the illegal aliens that are coming into the city. These people are illegal aliens. Guess who has to pay for that? The city of Chicago? No, the taxpayer people from the city of Chicago has to pay for that. And we don't know these people. We don't know if they're MS-13 or smugglers or cartel bringing in fentanyl. Democrat Party don't want to hear that. They said the border is closed, but it's not. But the main issue is the local politicians, from mayor all the way up to the governor, are a bunch of knuckleheads. They don't see crime. They don't hear crime. They see it on TV. They say they don't care. Most of these public officials have bodyguards, security, so they don't see it. And what the first guy said, he said they told him his brother was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't think it will get solved. The city of Chicago, the mayor, the city council, and the rest of the government, the local government, did a new law. They got rid of cash bail. Got rid of cash bail. Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm going to play the whole thing, but I'll get angry every time. I'm not going to do that. But we got a crisis here. Downfall of American family, black on black crime, and the politicians that don't care. So if you're watching this, thank you guys for watching. I was going to do the whole thing, but I get upset about that. I got other things to do. Guys, don't forget to watch this video, watch all my other videos. Thank you guys for coming in. Appreciate it. And I'll see y'all.